So it seems the furlough scheme is here to stay for a good few months yet. Following today's announcement, a policy paper is being prepared and distributed by the government, which sets out a number of important rules and provisions which will attach to the latest extension of the coronavirus job retention scheme, which will now run until the 31st of March 2021, with the aim of supporting individuals and businesses who are impacted by disruption caused by coronavirus this winter. The paper is keen to stress that as far as possible, the same rules that applied to the previous scheme will continue to apply here. But there are a few changes which are important to note and which I will take you through. These will be further expanded upon when we receive additional guidance due to be published on the 10th of November. The level of the grant will mirror that which was available under CJRS in August. So the government pays 80% of wages up to a cap of £2,500. The employer will pay national insurance contributions and pension, and that contribution will be reviewed in January and may reduce depending on economic circumstances. The first claims under the extended scheme can be made from 8 a.m. on the 11th of November, and again can be made in anticipation of an imminent payroll run simultaneously or in arrears. Claims should be submitted by day 14 of the subsequent month at the latest, and we're looking at 6 working days from claim to the grant being paid. Looking at eligibility, a lot wider than the previous scheme, so all employees with a UK bank account and PAYE scheme can claim. Neither the employer or employee have to have used the scheme previously to qualify. Employees have to be on the payroll by the 30th of October with an RTI submission before that date in order to qualify. If employees were on the payroll on the 23rd of September and were subsequently made redundant or stopped working afterwards, they can be re-employed and claimed for as long as an RTI submission had been made at some point between the 20th of March this year and the 23rd of September. Importantly, no gap in eligibility for support between the previous end date of the 31st of October and this extension, and a furlough agreement can be made retrospectively up to and including the 13th of November. So if you want to put someone on furlough and backdate that to the 1st of November, you must put an agreement in place by the 13th. I'll just pick up on shielding. I've had a lot of questions on this recently. The guidance explicitly confirms that an employee can be furloughed where they are unable to work because they are shielding in line with public health guidance or need to stay at home with someone who is shielding, or if they have caring responsibilities resulting from coronavirus, including employees that need to look after children. Now note that only employees who are clinically extremely vulnerable are being advised to shield. This is a much narrower category of individual than in the spring, and these individuals will be written to by Matt Hancock, and that letter that they receive will be evidence of their requirement to shield and of their entitlement to SSP. Note also that the government's guidance to those who live with a clinically extremely vulnerable person but who are not vulnerable themselves is to still go to work. So there's no automatic entitlement to be furloughed, and if somebody lives with a vulnerable person, there is no automatic obligation on us to allow them to be furloughed themselves. Now, when it comes to calculating pay, for employees who were previously eligible to be furloughed, whether they were actually furloughed or not, the same calculations for reference pay and usual hours will apply. So this will mean for salaried employees looking at the pay period prior to the 19th of March. Surprisingly, at the moment, there is no provision for any alteration of this. So if, for example, an employee has, for reasons unrelated to COVID, reduced their hours by a couple of days a week in August, bizarrely we still, at the moment, take the pay period prior to the 19th of March. This may be changed in the next version of the guidance. For employees who are not previously eligible to be furloughed, for example, they started between the 20th of March and the 30th of October, we use the pay period prior to the 30th of October as the basis of the calculations. And if an employee is on variable pay, you look at the average payable during the current tax year up to the day before they start their new furlough pattern. In terms of working patterns, extremely flexible, so as under the current CJRS, flexible furloughing will be allowed in addition to full-time furlough. Claim period must last a minimum of 7 consecutive calendar days, So no requirement for a 3-week period, as in the very first part of CJRS. And as long as there is a period of 7 days, an employee can work for any amount of time and on any work pattern. So that might mean working a certain number of hours in the week over the same number of days, or working a reduced number of days. As before, whilst on furlough, an employee can take part in training, volunteer for another employer, or work for another employer if contractually allowed. Employees can't do any work that makes money for or provides services to their employer. Importantly, written agreement must be in place again, although the employee does not have to provide a written response. And interestingly, the terms of any agreement must reflect the hours the employee has actually worked or not worked over the period of the agreement. So this suggests that on any future audit, they will be tightening up on the rules around the hours which have been worked, comparing that to the agreement reached. So if you are going to vary any working pattern during flexible furlough, make sure that is documented. And just finally, there is a note in the policy paper on relationship with the other schemes. The job support scheme has unsurprisingly been postponed until further notice, despite the government releasing 9 different guidance notes on Friday, which I spent a lot of time reviewing. And the job retention bonus, which pays £1,000 for those who are retained by January 2021. Now that has been postponed and it won't be payable in February. The policy paper says that a retention incentive will be deployed at the appropriate time. So we may have to look further into 2021 before any sort of retention payment will be made by the government. As I said, further guidance due on the 10th of November, and we will keep you fully up to date. Thank you.